It allows you to like open the window, but if it's raining, the water
Ah,
won't come inside.
I see. So smart. Is that
It's
door
pretty,
made by Mercedes or BMW?
it should be. I don't know, but I don't know. They don't cut corners when they,
They build stuff.
yeah. It's like there's some serious restrictions as far as what you do if
For
you're a
sure, I
builder.
know you like that.
I'm just enjoying the ride. So what happens and who all comes in here and what is going, yeah, what happens?
Well, okay, so welcome everybody to Testimony Time with Ty and Tino. Ty is the main host, and Tino, I'm just the co-host.
Oh, okay.
So every week we like to interview a brother or a sister, and ask them about their testimony because like we do that. When you listen to people's testimonies and you hear and see how God moves in their lives, it can really motivate you and inspire you, and even you can even see something. So we want to do that. The only different is instead of just saying, "Hey, okay, so tell us about your testimony," and then you just share for like the next 40 minutes, and we just nod like we're paying attention, right? We
Yeah.
actually ask you questions throughout the sharing,
Yeah.
like focusing in on what we would think would be like interesting things to talk about. So you may not necessarily cover everything, but we want to cover like the really important stuff. I mean, like hit the major peaks, and going from peaks to peak. So it's kind of like a I don't know if you ever heard Terry Gross, NPR, Fresh Air. I'm not saying that I'm doing that, but it's kind of like my inspiration, right? And by the way, I have discovered how hard this is to do. And I got mad respect for what she can do, man. Like I don't know how you pull that off. But anyway, so we did Chris last week, and so I thought, well, I mean, it just seemed right to go ahead and hit the other guy, the better half.
Yes, he mentioned you. Yeah, he mentioned you in his testimony quite often.
He
So
did, yeah, he did. It
Oh
almost
man,
became like let's just talk about Trevor instead of me.
that's okay. Okay.
So welcome everybody. For those of you who do know, this is Trevor Lee. For those of you who don't, this is Trevor Lee. Trevor grew up in his family grew up in Shanghai, hence the last name Lee. Anyway, there are other connections we won't mention. But I would say, real quick to begin the show, maybe Trevor, you can just tell everybody where you're really from and where did you grow up, and what I want to know is this: based on where you grow up, how do you think that affected you as a person?
Oh.
And you got like 2 minutes to answer this. That's it.
Okay. I grew up in Palos Verdes, California, which is in Los Angeles.
And what's one fact about Palos Verdes that's interesting?
oh, nice.
One fact about Palos Verdes that's
What is
interesting.
it known for?
It's a wealthy area that allows movie stars to live places where the paparazzi doesn't chase them.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's a lot of very famous people who live there, and it's kind of like this place to get away.
Okay. Is it huge, small? Is it up in the hill? Is it?
Yeah, it's basically opposite of the San Bernardino Mountains, which is where the Hollywood sign is.
Okay.
And it's the only other elevated piece of land on the LA basin, and it's right on the ocean. So you
Okay.
look at it and you can see it off in the distance. It's like another hill.
Wow. Okay. And so growing up there, how did that affect you as a person?
It taught me that money is total vanity.
How early on did you know that?
I think I really saw it in high school. Just growing up, there was a common joke that the students had better there were better cars in the student parking lot than in the teacher's parking lot.
I believe it.
And that was an ongoing joke. So um, yeah, you got to see the vanity of it all really quickly. That this doesn't make anybody happy, and we were kind of the growing up, you don't really know this, but looking back, you realize that you're kind of like the upper echelon of society is financially, and it was just normal life to me though. So it wasn't, we had to work for everything in my family. So I never really got to see any of that. That was very much drilled into us as kids, is we're not going to give you anything.
Hmm.
So
And how prevalent was that notion in high school that you had? Like, the ton of the students kind of feel the same way, or were you say that was the kind of exception to the norm?
that it was all vanity.
Hmm.
Actually, I was talking to Katie about this, my wife, a couple days ago, because I've been kind of looking back on some of my friends on Facebook from high school, and we I've just realized like a lot of my friends went into like humanitarian things.
Mm.
And I find that very interesting that they didn't really chase the world. They kind of wanted to give back.
Hmm.
So I think it did have an effect on a lot of them. Most of them, I think, did chase the world. They went into dad's business
Hmm.
or whatever. But there's a lot who like went into politics and went into like other types of things that um, they saw problems in the world and they wanted to change it, type of thing.
Wow, that's interesting. Interesting. So you finished high school, then what did you do?
I hated school with a
You hated
passion.
school. Why did you hate school?
School sucks.
Why?
School is
You have an
made.
Asian last name. How can you say school sucks?
I hate my last name. School was designed for people not like me, and so I struggled in school since I was a little kid. I had and still do have learning disabilities. So that was always a massive struggle for me. So I excelled on the playground. So the kids who we might play like games in class, like educational games, and I was always like the last one picked, and then I would go slam the ball on their head when we went out on the playground, because that's where I would excel. So I'd get back on the playground. But I hated school. I always struggled in it, and I just thought differently. So that was kind of my thing. It wasn't I wasn't a math or science person. I always loved history, and that was pretty much it. So
Why
unless we
did you
were
why did you like history?
why
Yeah. I mean, that's
I like
that's kind of actually doesn't make sense. I mean, people hate school really hate history because there's so much reading and writing and
I like to know the origin of things. I
okay.
liked I liked to know where I came from. Um,
When did
oh,
that start for you growing up?
oh, early on. If my mom took me to the library, I would go straight to the World War II section
Okay.
and find every single coloring book or book on like war, and I would just look at all the pictures. I was fascinated with it. So I don't know where it really started. Um, I just always loved history. My mom studied history, so she talked about it a lot. We watched a lot of movies growing up, documentaries and stuff.
Mm,
So I just ate it up.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that might have saved you right there.
Yeah,
And
I think
both your parents are Christians. Well, how's your family? Even
yeah.
everyone's pretty much like.
Yeah, my mom's a pastor's kid. My grandfather started a bunch of churches all the way up the West Coast. My grandfather,
He started
yeah, they,
something that people uh, may know pretty well. What did he start?
yeah, he was one of five brothers who graduated from Dallas Theological Seminary in the early 1940s during World War II, and they got this idea to um, go to the youth to bring the gospel to the youth. And so they started in Dallas this organization called Young Life. And once they, yeah, basically their game four corners. So the guy who's credited for starting Young Life stayed in Dallas. I forget his name, but the other four went to the four corners of the United States to carry on what they started there in Texas. And so my grandfather went to Washington,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much all of the Young Life stuff up in the Northwest was started by my grandfather. So
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, Washington, Idaho, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
So I want to ask you, growing up, what did you think of God, and how early did things begin to percolate in you?
okay. So
And I've actually never asked you this before.
Whoa.
okay, a lot of people don't really know about like my early childhood God stuff. Basically, basically I hated going to church. I absolutely hated it. Mostly because it was like I made it to the weekend. I hated school for 5 days. I finally made it to the weekend, and now you're making me go to Sunday school, which was now my new idea of, that's how I was introduced God. You hate school so much, so now we're going to give you school God. um, so I just really hated it. I mean, I listened intently when they were talking. I remember still vividly a lot of times like them sharing stories with us and learning about Daniel in the lion's den or Noah and all this stuff. But I really struggled as a kid. Like, so they used to call my parents out of the church service all the time because I was like losing it. And so eventually my mom allowed me just to go to big church. That's what we called it. So eventually they took me to big church, and they just promised that I wouldn't, or I promised that I wouldn't make too much noise in the pews. So I went to the adult service a majority of my life, uh, just sitting next to my parents. And then I would listen really intently to what the pastor says, and then I would blitz my mom with questions on the way home. Well, actually, both my parents. So, and I was taught at a very young age that God is mysterious, and his ways are higher than our ways. And if we don't know something, then it's because he's mysterious.
Who taught you that?
And you just have to have faith. So that was always the answer that was given to me since I was a little kid.
Okay. So taught not in a good way. I mean, just kind of like taught in a negative way.
Yeah, I was difficult. I mean, I remember when I was 10, I got in the car on the way home, and I tell this story a lot, but I just learned that Jesus died for our sins,
Mm.
and he came to save us. That was the term that was always used. And then this one Sunday they were talking about the Old Testament sacrifices. So when I got in the car, I asked my mom, I was like, well, he didn't come to save us. He just came to save the animals. Because after him, they stopped sacrificing them. So I really didn't understand logically why people said that he came to save us. when clearly the animals were the ones that stopped dying. So anyway, my parents were, I was not a normal 10-year-old kid. Like, I'm asking they were normal questions to me. It seemed very logical. Um, yeah, I don't know if my mom really knew what to do a lot of the times. Or my dad. I kind of keep saying my mom because she was the pastor's kid. So my dad was kind of the quiet Christian in the house, and my mom was kind of like the go-to for answers, even though it was mostly you just have to have faith.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that got pretty old.
Okay. So, um, so did all this eventually lead to some kind of a spiritual crisis? I
I
mean,
got
it
tired.
seems like things were building up in you, and you weren't maybe getting answers you wanted, or fully getting what you need to get out of it. So, usually when people have these experiences, eventually at some point, it kind of just comes to a boil.
Oh yeah. That was after high school. So all of high school, all of my friends were Christians. We all went to the same church. We had a huge youth group. It was like 1,200 kids at this youth group, and all in high school. And so we had a lot of fun. And I got tired in high school. I was actually like a very mischievous kid, but I wasn't doing like sinful worldly things. I never drank before I was 21 or ever did any drugs or anything. And so, but my friends and I always found ways to get in trouble because, anyway, that's probably another story. But we would do a lot of things to entertain ourselves. So I I was I met the law enforcement a couple times.
Wow.
Even though I was like, they were kind of shocked a lot of times that my friends and I were totally sober doing the things that we were doing. But that's what we did to entertain ourselves. And so I got tired of trying not to sin. That was really what the Christian life was for me, is we're waiting around until we die, and we're just try to be a good person when you can, tell someone about Jesus. But the real goal is just don't sin.
Yeah.
And that got really old to me because all of my really worldly friends were having way more fun than I was. And so when I graduated from high school, it was like, that was kind of the breaking point. Like, I'm done with this. And so that's when I just, after high school, I immediately started working because I didn't want to go to school anymore. And I worked for about 5.5, 6 years doing different jobs. And I didn't have that support system anymore that I did in high school. So I just, I think that kind of flung me into a lot of bad things. So that's when I really started to experiment in the world and spent a lot of time going to parties in Hollywood and going to frat parties at USC and UCLA, and where all my friends from high school went. So they would invite me to these things, and started to get swallowed up by that. But the whole time I was doing that stuff, I knew what I was doing was wrong. And every night I would go home and get in bed, I would just feel horrible. That And I would just start repenting for everything I was doing. But I didn't know anything else. I didn't know what else to do. It was either that or try to be a good person and not have fun.
Mm.
So that was kind of where I was at. So anyway, I think I eventually decided to go back to school. All my friends started graduating and getting way better jobs than I had. And I had been working already for almost 6 years. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school. So I moved in. I moved in with my sister into Redondo Beach, which is the beach community right next to Palos Verdes, and we lived across the street from the beach in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we were like living the SoCal dream. And I started to become very seeking, even though I was still very much like going out with my friends and doing a lot of things I shouldn't do. Um, I started to really wonder, and this thought kind of got in my head. I was never a science guy, obviously in school. I was never a science guy.
Mm,
I was very philosophical and very logical,
mm,
and I started really questioning God's righteousness. So how can he judge people if and this is where my background really started to affect me, because it was like I've received so much and I feel like I just won like the lottery of life. And is it just that the kid in India was born into a different family, and so he's going to hell, and he had a horrible life also, and that's just the way it is. And I was born into my family, and I also got to know that Jesus was Lord and got saved, and that really started to bother me a lot, and it kind of consumed me for years, where I started becoming very, very open to other religions and other ideas, because I had never tried them, but I'm always saying, oh, Muslims aren't right, and I hadn't done any research. I hadn't tried it, you know.
mm,
Um, so that kind of drove me to becoming kind of agnostic. I didn't have the audacity to say that there was no God, because I was like, that's just stupid. Like, where did I come from? So that was very logical to me, that something created all this. It's too complex. But is he really the God that I learned about my whole life, or does somebody else have it right and we were just totally misled? So I started taking like religious studies courses at my college, and it was just weird. I mean, those classes were really, really strange, and I started getting really into psychology and philosophy, and it really tickled my brain, because that's kind of the way I was brought up. And um, eventually eventually the big turning point for me was getting out of my bubble, and my bubble was those two communities in Southern California. And so there was this opportunity to go on a study abroad to
That the first
Australia.
time, was that the first time you traveled out of the country with this opportunity, or had you gone out
But
before?
actually, the first time I ever left the country, the first country I ever went to was Germany. And
Wow.
I went on a trip with my dad. I had a really horrible breakup with my girlfriend, and my dad was trying to get my mind off of it, because I was in this horrible state of depression. And so he took me on a business trip, and we went to Germany, and then we went to Austria, and we went on a bike ride down the Danube River in Austria.
Mm,
And that was the first time I'd ever left the country. But this was the first time I left the country on my own, where it wasn't dictated by a parent or anything. And so I went on this study abroad to Australia, and absolutely lost my mind how much I fell in love with Australia. It was the greatest place on earth. Uh, I ended up naming my first daughter Sydney because of my obsession with Australia. And so, um, I wasn't doing anything good when I was on the study abroad, but it opened my eyes a lot, and really I would say it opened my heart to the world. It was I wasn't in this little bubble anymore. So when I came back, to say that I had like the travel bug is an understatement. I was completely obsessed. So I couldn't think about anything else. Like, I cannot wait to get on another airplane. So anyway, I don't know if I should keep going, but should I just keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
When was it? How old was that when you went to Australia?
How old?
Yeah, how old were you?
I was like 24.
Okay. And so from that point on, were you pretty much like every year going somewhere?
Well, actually, okay, so I was so obsessed. I was so obsessed that I was already planning to go on the same study abroad the next year and like basically take the same classes. Like, I didn't even care. I just wanted to go back. And
Because why? Because you were just having fun, or because you were just seeing things you hadn't seen before? I mean, what?
everything for sure. I mean, I was having the time of my life. And at the same time, it was like, it was the world. I mean, like, we went to New Zealand, we went to Fiji, we went to Australia, and we're just like living it up. And I'm like, man, like, Southern California sucks. I mean, this is awesome. And so I just wanted to go back, but the Lord was still really working on me um, during that time.
So in all of that and through all of that, how did things turn in the direction toward the Lord?
I was just really, really seeking, and the friends that I was partying with, we we would have like these really deep conversations at odd points in the night. You know, it would be like 2 in the morning, and we're just like, you like let down your guard, and you start talking about stuff. And normally I'm going to the gym with these guys all the time, but we would never talk about this stuff.
Mhm.
But 2 a.m. on a Friday night, which is really Saturday morning, man, we're just like telling each other the deepest, darkest parts of our being, and opening up, like, what do you really think about God? And so um, I was very much still seeking. I wasn't convinced that the God of the Bible was God, obviously. So I was open to experimenting with other religions. And so during that time, a lot of things transpired in one day, which I don't really need to get into all the things that transpired, but it was pretty horrible. And I knew that God was in control. And so I knew all these things were bad that happened. And so I knew he was doing this, and I'm mad at him. And I don't even know which God this is, but I'm mad at him. And so I was driving down Hawthorne Boulevard going south, and I hit Torrance Boulevard. For anybody who knows, whoever sees this knows what that is. So I was at that intersection, and I just started cursing at God. I was so mad at him. And I hadn't really talked to God or opened my mouth in his direction for probably 3 or 4 years. But besides just repenting, like, I'm so sorry, and that was it. But this was like, I was letting him have it. And in that moment, there was a very, something flooded the vehicle that I have never experienced since, nor do I ever expect to experience it again. And it was this love that was so strong, I could almost taste it. It was like palatable. And it flooded the vehicle. And the more angry I got and the more I cursed, the more it came in. And I just like was overwhelmed with this feeling, like, what is going on? And basically when I finally stopped, um, two huge things happened. One was every ambition that I had left, and I then directed everything that I wanted to do. I wanted to meet the person that I just met. And the second one was, who in the world was that? Because I don't know anybody in this world that curses someone and they respond that way. And so I was just like, I really need to figure out who this person is.
Hmm.
And so I drove home and I sat down with my mom and I burst into tears. And I told her that I'm leaving. I'm going to go to the bank and take out a loan because nothing's given in my family. So I know that you guys are going to say no. And I'm leaving and I don't know when I'll be back. Um, I know that sounds like a song because it is. And basically my mom just told me, she said, well, I agree that you need to leave, and I've been praying for you for years on my knees every night that you would turn back to him. And I was like, Mom, I'm not really sure I'm turning back to him. You're him, but I'm definitely turning. And she knew how messed up my life was at the time, and so she knew that this was kind of an opportunity. So she told me that if you go to a Bible school during this journey, your dad and I will pay for it.
Mm.
Wow.
And Mama didn't raise no fool. So I knew that, I don't want to be in debt later. So I'll just go with my mom's wishes, even though she's manipulating me and doing some blackmail, and I'll go with it. So about 2 weeks later, I had moved out of the apartment that my sister and I were in, and I was on a flight to Japan. And for the next year, I just traveled by myself, trying to pretty much find myself. I didn't really know what I was going to do. Over the next couple weeks, I ended up finding a family in Thailand, in Lanthap, Thailand. If you can find that on a map,
Lane.
Lanthap. It's
Yeah,
just
can't
inland.
say it.
It's it's just inland from Krabi, Thailand, and this family picked me up at the airport, and we drove 2 hours into the jungle, and I lived in a very small house on the floor with this family for the next couple months.
Wow.
And yeah, I could do a lot of Thailand stories, but I'll probably spare you all. So then I ended up going to the Bible school in Australia, and I was their worst nightmare. So I ended up going into YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission, and it was in Brisbane, Australia. And their motto is to know God and make Him known. And so the knowing God part is the first, pretty much like the first 6 months is you're just in school every day, and then for 2 months after that you do like this outreach, 2 or 3 months. So our outreach was originally supposed to be going through the outback and driving these vans all through Australia and visiting Aboriginal communities. But my leader, who I didn't like at all, um, he and I didn't do well together. He was Papua New Guinean, and so he kind of manipulated the whole thing to go to Papua New Guinea instead. So I got really mad because it's like, that's not what I signed up for, dude. Like, you're just like switching this up on all of us, and we're just supposed to be cool with it. Like, anyway, so we ended up, I was their worst nightmare because I don't even know what that was. I was their worst nightmare because they really anything they brought up, I would just destroy it. and and they would it's a very Pentecostal school, and so they would try to teach us how to speak in tongues and things like that. And I tried it. I was like, hey, I don't know, I mean, why not? I'll just start making noises, and they seemed really happy with the result. And so but I never I did have experiences of the Lord when I was in it that I can't really deny. um it was I did touch the Lord many times. They had a whole week that would be in comparison to clearing the past. And we basically just, we did a thorough confession to the Lord for the whole week, and just washed our past, which I really needed. I was carrying around a lot of guilt. And through that time, the brother that was leading the class, he encouraged us to go back and make right all the wrongs that you've done to other people. And so months later, when I finally made it back to the US, I tracked down all these people that the Lord brought up.
Wow.
And some of them I hadn't seen for 10 years. And basically, I really felt like I needed to see them face to face. I didn't want to just write them an email. So those that were willing to meet up with me, I did. And I went back and I just told them, like, the Lord's really changed my life, and I just want to tell you that I'm sorry. And many of them were very open to the gospel when I did that. They were totally shocked that I would even try to repent after all that time. So we ended up going to Papua New Guinea. And I oftentimes tell people that the most real prayer I ever had in my life, where my whole entire heart, my whole being was in this prayer, was we went to this tiny island off of the coast of Papua New Guinea. And missionaries actually refused to go to this island because it's so demonic. And so missionaries were telling us, they're like, oh, don't go there. People go there and they don't come back. People go there and they get attacked by demons. People go there. And I was like, hey, I'm cool. Like, I don't need to go to this island. But my leader wanted to be like this super Christian soldier. And he's like, no, I'm taking the whole school and we're going to the island. Of course. So we go to the island. We walk onto the island. We walk into the first village, and this kid sees us. And the moment he sees us, he begins cursing at us. He's like playing with his friends, and he sees us. He begins cursing and foaming at the mouth. And then he falls on the ground and just starts urinating all over himself and like seizuring. And all of the leaders were like, he's possessed. And they all like ran up and surrounded him and started casting this demon out. And I came from, Richville, USA in Palos Verdes. And I'm like, man, I ain't dealing with this, and so I was just like, get me away from this kid. I don't know if that demon, I'm thinking, if that demon comes out of that kid, where is it going to go? Like I don't want it anywhere near me. Like, keep it in him. I don't care. Like, and so I was like not feeling it. And basically one of the Fijian leaders that we had, he turned to me and he looks at me and he, I'll never forget. He's like, Trevor, get in the fight, And I'm like, yeah, I'll pray for you, And so I kind of backed away from this little circle, and I leaned up against this wall and I was just watching. And the Lord really unveiled me in that moment that I knew the complexity of the universe, and I knew, I was like, this seems to be the pinnacle of Christianity. Like, I'm doing it. This is what everybody at church says is like, oh, these are the hardcore Christians. They're the ones that go to Africa or Asia or whatever, and they start casting demons out. And I'm watching it happen. And I'm just overwhelmed with this feeling like there has to be more than this. If I'm going to buy into this with my whole heart, then Lord, you've got to show me what you're really doing on this earth, because I refuse to believe that the complexity of the universe, this same God, has such a simple and honestly kind of boring plan that he came, he died so that you could go to heaven. And in the meantime, the more demons you can cast out, the better. And so I just told the Lord very honestly, I said, Lord, I don't know where the front line is on the earth. and I don't know, I don't know where that is or who that is, but I want to be on the front line of whatever you're doing on the earth.
Seems
And what's up?
seems like everything that had gone before was just to get you to that moment.
For sure. And it actually, that prayer propelled me to where I am now. I feel like everything, I mean, that's just who I guess, I don't know. It became a part of who I am. And so I didn't know at the time, of course. I didn't know like what was going to happen. I was just going to keep seeking. The guy's okay, by the way. He did get the demon cast out of him and he received the Lord. So
Yeah.
that's a part of the story I never really tell. But I ended up coming back to the US after I contracted a disease there, but we can bypass that part of the story also. And
A
I
near-death disease.
what's up?
A near-death disease.
It was?
Yeah.
So you're back in the U.S.
Yeah. I'll just say they evac'd me to a tropical disease hospital in Australia after I contracted this disease.
Yeah.
So, and I was in isolation for a couple of weeks in Australia trying to recover.
Then
So
when
I
did you
did.
get to the greatest country?
What's up?
When did you get to the greatest country at this point? When did you come to Texas?
You're ridiculous. So you're so ridiculous. You guys really need to get out of your bubble. So speaking of bubbles, so basically, so actually during the school, before I went to Papua New Guinea, this is a little side topic about Texas, but during that time, I started applying to universities back home, and I was going to transfer, and I had every desire to get out of California. So naturally, why wouldn't you apply to places that you really want to go and live for a couple of years? So of course, on the top of my list was the University of Hawaii. Why not? And then followed by the University of Miami. Okay. And so I'm picking all these universities where I'm like, man, it'd be so awesome to live there, you know? Every school was outside of California. My brother went to Baylor and ran track there. And he always had this like secret obsession with Austin because the Waco sucks. And so they would always come down to Austin to hang out and do stuff. So he immediately starts plugging my ear, hey, apply to Texas. And I'm like, dude, no way. And so I'm like, so the two top schools that I applied for was Virginia, the University of Virginia, which was started by Thomas Jefferson, and which has a really good history program. And then the University of Texas. I did not have anywhere near the grades that I needed to get into either one of those schools. I mean, like not even in the right hemisphere. Okay. So at the time, Texas only accepted 2% of the of outside. It's actually easier to get in if I came from Europe as an international student. So an out-of-state transfer student is less than 2% of the school. And I still applied. Because I applied when I was in Australia, they didn't release my transcripts. And I had to be there in person. My mom went down to El Camino College in California and threatened to burn the school to the ground, I think. So then they released my transcripts. But they released them 2 weeks late. My mom then called the University of Texas and told them, please just at least review it. They said, ma'am, we've already thrown it away. I'm sorry, you have to apply next semester. While I'm in Papua New Guinea, I get a phone call from my mom. I call her on a payphone. I know you guys don't even know what those are, you know, payphones. So I call her on this payphone in Papua New Guinea. And my mom tells me, she goes, we just got a package in the mail and you got accepted to every university, including the University of Texas.
Wow.
Now, the funny part about it was I had made a deal with the Lord before this happened, that if I get accepted to Texas, because I had this weird feeling, and I have to tell you, it's like the first time I realized the difference between my soul and my spirit. Nothing in my soul wanted to go to Texas. Nothing. But there was this inward sense telling me you have to go there. And I had no idea what that was. I'd never experienced that before. And so I made this deal with the Lord. Lord, if this is really you and I get in, then I'll go. And then this whole thing happened with my transcripts. And so I'm like, man, are you kidding me? I got to go to that ugly campus. And I'm just like, I'm really over it. You know, by the way, I'm just going to say this one thing. I love Texas, but it really is one color. Okay. So like everything, it's just different shades of brown. So I end up going to the campus. Okay. Even the buildings are brown. And okay, so this is where it all goes down. Ty, are you ready for this, bro?
Yeah.
My parents moved me in. Okay. I'm living behind the engineering building on Sanjak in this apartment complex, the Oakview condominiums. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm chilling there in my own apartment, and I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone. And I don't know a soul in Texas, actually. My parents drop me off, they leave, they give me a high five, congratulations, thank you for actually making something of yourself, and then they leave. And I'm sitting in my apartment for like a week, just kind of, I don't know what to do. And I keep getting these flyers from different Christian groups, and they're coming in the mail. And so I had been praying for months that the Lord would send me the right group of people. I was terrified that I would fall back into this very superficial, materialistic Christianity that I was in California, and I would just get swallowed back up. You know, one of our teachers in YWAM used to tell us all the time that the gospel in America spread 3,000 miles wide and only a millimeter deep. And so that was really my experience when he said that. I was like, yeah, that's right. It's only a millimeter deep. And so I was terrified of that. So I kept praying for the Lord to send me these people like missionaries, because I was like, man, these people are hardcore and I want to be around them. So I started praying over these like flyers, and I was kind of Pentecostal at the time, charismatic, whatever you want to call it. So I'm looking at the flyers and I'm like, okay, God, move a flyer, you know. And none of them moved, and I'm like, gosh dang it, you know, like. And so I then get all my classes online, and I decide, okay, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna like get a feel for the campus, you know. So I'm walking across, I walk all over campus, and now I'm walking back, and there's this table set up in front of one of the engineering buildings there on Sanjak and Speedway. And Tino and I have very different stories about this. Okay, but basically, I walk by, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, like that's a Christian group, but I'm not interested. Okay, and so I kind of walk by, and I'm like, yeah, you know, and I get to the light. And the funny thing was, I had just been in Papua New Guinea, where we just kind of cold go up to people and start talking to them about the Lord. And I was like, man, I don't know about that. You know, I'm not going to do that. So Tino starts coming over to me, and I'm like, and I know what he's feeling, because I had just experienced a lot of this, where you just go up to some random person you don't know. And so I'm kind of like laughing to myself, because I'm like, now I'm the guy who's like receiving it. And he hands me this flyer. And now Tino might tell you that he thought I was there for beers and girls. Okay, this was his stereotype that he had on me. Okay, which is understandable. That's understandable. I don't, anyway. So he walked up and he handed me the flyer to the welcome dinner, and I said, actually, I've been praying to the Lord that He would send me the right group of people for the last 4 months. And at that point, he was pretty shocked, but he said very boldly in my face, this is the right group of people.
Wow.
And to give him credit, I have to be honest. Now he would soon find out how skeptical I was about everything. And so the moment he said that, I'm like, oh, of course, it's your group. Like, who wouldn't say that? But we exchanged information. I actually, to this day, remember almost our entire conversation. Okay. And I gave him my number and I left. And I ended up going back, and I had no desire to really go to this thing. But I just felt like, okay, you know what? Like I have to put myself out there, and I have to meet other Christians. So I'm going to go to this thing. And so then I ended up going, and I don't even know where to go from here, bro. Okay.
Yeah, that's enough on that. So out of time for today.
So Tino, actually, okay, Tino, what a lot of you don't know is that pretty much I'll give Tino at least 80% of the stuff that I know I got from Tino.
Wow.
Okay. So
Important stuff.
80% of all the things I've learned in life,
The fluff.
I did not get from Tino. No, I'm just joking. But it was basically Tino. I think, I mean, I'll let him say this, but I think Tino found me as an extreme challenge. Okay. So I am going to break this kid. And he basically would come over to my apartment because I live very close to campus. He would come over 3 times a week at least. And we would just argue. I mean, like we had epic battles. Okay. And I enjoyed it. Okay. Unlike what most people think, I actually very much enjoyed it. Because this was kind of how my family worked. It was like, we're going to work through an issue by getting to the bottom of it. And we're going to get there by telling you how we really feel. Okay. So it's like, you know, and those of us who know Tino, he does the same thing. So we actually meshed really well. And so he would come over and we would just get in these epic things, you know. Now I have to tell you this. I don't know how many girls are in this call, but okay. The thing that impressed me the most about the group, there were 2 things. One was these people are nicer than Mormons. And I'd never, like, it was incredible to me, you know. But I had pushed Mormons before, and they're like toothpaste, you know, when you squeeze somebody, you really see what comes out of them. And so I had this kind of like, you know, mischievous plan that I'm going to squeeze these people and see what comes out. And so I challenged a lot of things. And what always came out was this, like, I didn't even have the language for it, you know. Now I do. But in the past I was like, well, it's the fruits of the spirit, you know. And I didn't know. It was incredible. The other thing that really impressed me was that I had never been in a group of people where the sisters knew so much.
They knew the word. Wow.
And it was insane to me. I was like the sisters would speak, and it was like, I've never heard a woman speak like that in my entire life. And so that was very, very impressive to me. So as an encouragement to the sisters, continue speaking, because a huge testimony. It's like, it's huge, Ty. So I was like, I don't know who trained these people, but it's pretty incredible. Like, so slowly but surely I started to see what Tina was talking about. I don't know if Tina wants to ask a specific question at this point.
I do. We're kind of running out of time, honestly, but you mentioned your brother ran track. I know you ran track. You ran track in school as well. Yeah. So I never asked you this question. I never thought of it, but I want to ask you, like, who's faster, you or your brother?
My brother's faster at distance. I'm faster at sprints.
Okay, so you guys did the opposite race.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So now that you're in Germany, you get to play anything? Soccer? I mean, you go out with the kids, the college kids. Do they get you outside and do stuff, or what do you do?
We've played soccer a couple times. They're, you know, if you break out of football, it's just like, it's just so embarrassing. Like, you can't even.
Sorry.
Like, it's really bad. I mean, the way they cock their arm and everything, it's just so, like, the ball. They don't have any sport that involves throwing, so it's like they never learn how to throw. So it gets pretty embarrassing quickly, and I kind of just give up. So I have a football, but it's not being thrown very much unless one of you guys comes and visits me.
Yeah, you should teach them.
I know, but I just don't. Guys, I feel bad because I didn't say Chris Hall yet. Okay, so should I say Chris Hall? And then I met Chris Hall.
2009.
2009.
Yeah.
2009. Let's see. I feel like we need to have another session with you. It's like
we
feel that way, Ty?
I feel that same.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm getting thumbs up from people I don't even see. Okay.
Yeah. I think we need a session, bro. There's a lot here.
Those are those ghost people that just like to hang out and not participate.
They're listening, man. They're listening.
Nathaniel. Oh, sorry. Called you.
Nathaniel, the right color here.
Okay, so this is the deal. I could keep going, or we maybe reschedule this for another time.
We will need to reschedule because I have babysitting duties now.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Second part.
Let's do part 2. Maybe if we can, let's aim. Can we do this again next Monday at 3 p.m.?
Sure. Yeah, I think I can. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. We'll make this.
Try to bring Sydney. Keep her awake at least for the first 5 minutes.
Bro, there is no way.
Here's what I want to say with all the ones who are listening. So between now and next Monday, you guys come with a question, something you want to ask Trevor, based on what we talk about today. You don't have to. If something comes up, bring it next week. Throw it in the chat, and we'll hit them. We'll hit them if and when we can. But I feel like we kind of. I do feel like we kind of just only had half the book now. We do need.
I kind of knew
so much.
I thought 3 or 4 parts. But
yeah.
We'll see what we get to next one.
Yeah. But man, it's good to see you, Trevor.
Yes.
Good to see you guys too.
Yeah, we need to do this more often.
For sure. Are you guys?
Thanks for sharing, Trevor.
What's up?
I said thanks for sharing.
For sure, Karen. Karen is my favorite Egyptian sister.
Wow, that means so much, Trevor.
Karen, who spent a couple weeks in Paris thinking that she was going to go to school and then didn't.
That was a scam, wasn't it?
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
But you did come visit us. That was tight.
That was fun.
All right. Well, tell me. Yeah. I mean, you guys can ask me anything. So.
Yeah. Okay. So we will do this again, same time, same channel next week.
Cool.
And,
hopefully I won't look as tired.
No, you look fine, bro.
Okay. Well, yeah.
The lighting's fine. You look good.
Thanks, Trev.
Thank you.
Hey, this is cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks, Trevor.
Hi, Edith. How you doing?
Good. It's good to see you and hear you.
See you too.
Looking forward for the second part.
Okay. I hope it delivers.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Let's see if I can try to get Chris on here next week.
Hey. Ooh.
I'm gonna make it happen.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, bro.
Thanks.
Yeah. See you guys later.
All right. See you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.